There was a young man named Akin. Akin was a handsome young man and very hardworking too. Akin sold building materials in the market, and although he wasn't considered wealthy, he was doing well enough for himself. Akin was married to a beautiful young woman named Folake. Folake was not only beautiful but also very kind-hearted and was loved by many. Because of this, Folake was very industrious and had learned a trade before she got married. She knew how to style hair, and because of her skill, she always had many customers and made a lot of money. From her earnings, she always supported her parents at home, as she was the first child among 4 siblings. Folake was best friends with Titi, Akin's younger sister, and that was how they met. Each time Folake visited Titi, her best friend, Akin would observe her quietly. This continued for several months until he was sure he wanted to marry her. He admired that Folake was not only beautiful but also very hardworking, well-mannered, homely, and always decently dressed. She was his perfect idea of a wife. So when Akin informed his sister Titi of his intention to marry her best friend Folake, Titi was thrilled. Folake was very happy to be marrying Akin. She had always liked him and admired him whenever she visited her friend. He was everything she had ever wished for in a man. Soon, Akin and Folake began to date, and a few months later, they got married. They were very happy. Folake was determined to make her homework. Throughout her childhood, her mother had taught her that it was a woman's duty to build a home. Folake made sure to put into practice all that her mother had taught her. She took great care of Akin, cooked delicious meals for him, and made him feel like a king in his own home. Folake was also very prayerful, praying for her husband every day, asking God to keep him safe, bless him, and make him prosper. Every day, while Akin went to the market for his business, Folake went to her shop to style hair. Soon, Folake started doing very well, earning a substantial amount of money. Each day when she returned home from work, she would excitedly show Akin how much she had made. "Look at the amount I made today. A whopping 40,000 naira. If I keep this up, I'll become a millionaire soon," she would say excitedly. Akin was always happy for her and would say, "My dear, this is part of the reasons why I love you so much. You're so industrious. Keep it up." However, a few months after they got married, Folake began to notice changes in Akin. Whenever they had a minor disagreement, he would shout at her and say, "Is it because you're making a little money now that you're being so disrespectful? I don't blame you." Folake couldn't understand why he was behaving this way, as she had never disrespected him and wondered why he had become so cruel. She decided to be more submissive and apologized whenever they had a quarrel, even if she wasn't at fault. One day during the festive season, Akin and Folake went to work together in the morning. But because the festive season was Folake's peak period, with many women wanting their hair done for the celebrations, she came home very late. When she entered the house, she found Akin sitting in the parlor, very angry. He looked at her and shouted, "So I should not eat because you're making money. This little money you're making, nobody will hear about it. From today, I don't want you working anymore. Stay at home and be a housewife. Your duty is in the kitchen. You have no business working or making money," Akin said angrily. "Akin, it hasn't come to that. I thought part of the reason you loved me was because I was industrious and hardworking. You know this is the festive season, and I'm very busy. Besides, you never mentioned that I would have to stop working when we got married. You know how much I love my job and how I try to take good care of you and the home. Also, as the first child of my parents, I need to support them with the little I earn. That way, I won't have to ask you for everything," Folake said, looking worried. "Woman, I don't know if you heard a word of what I said. I wasn't asking for your suggestions. You are my wife, and you will do as I say." "This discussion is over," Akin said as he stood up and walked away angrily. Folake sat down, perplexed. She had never imagined she would be a stay-at-home wife. She had always worked and earned money since becoming an adult and had never had to depend on anyone except her father. She wept all night and begged Akin to reconsider his decision, but he was resolute. So, Folake stopped working, remembering her mother's teachings that women must respect and obey their husbands. Since Akin was doing well enough to take care of them, Folake stayed at home while he went to work. She cooked, cleaned, and did all the house chores but found herself always bored with nothing to do. Whenever Folake needed money for food or household items, Akin would scrutinize her list carefully. When did this become 2500 naira? You bought it for 2300 naira before. How is your soap finished in 2 weeks? I thought you bought 2 packs last time. Remove the soap from your list. If your soap finishes before time, use an alternative like washing soap or learn to make black soap like my friends' wives. You should also start buying food stuff in the local market to get it cheaper. You must learn to be prudent with money, Akin would say angrily as he struck off several items from her list. Folake was becoming very frustrated. Akin never gave her enough money to buy food and household items, not to mention money for her own personal upkeep or to support her parents. She tried to adjust the list by increasing prices or adding items that they already had to get some extra money, but Akin always caught her. He would count the onions and monitor the foodstuff in the kitchen regularly. Folake came up with a plan to secretly bring some of her customers to the house during the day when Akin was at work so she could make some money for herself. She was lucky a few times, but one day, Akin came home early due to illness and caught her with a customer. So this is what you do when I'm at work? Akin said, as he chased the customer away. Pointing at Folake, he said, if you try this nonsense again, bringing a customer into our house while I'm at work, be prepared to return to your father's house, Akin said angrily and stormed out. Folake cried all day and confided in her best friend Titi, who advised her to obey Akin, saying she knew her brother well and that if Folake disobeyed him again, he would indeed send her back to her father's house. So Folake decided to completely obey Akin and stay at home while he worked. In no time, Akin's business began to prosper. He made so much money that he opened 3 additional shops. Folake was hopeful that now Akin would start giving her money without overcalculating, but nothing changed. Akin continued to meticulously control every naira he gave Folake and never gave her enough. Meanwhile, Akin bought 2 cars for himself and spent a lot on expensive clothes and shoes, while Folake repeatedly wore old clothes and had stopped using cream. She looked more like Akin's house help than his wife. She was always sad and had to plead with Akin repeatedly for money to buy new clothes, but he would reply harshly, saying, "So you want me to change your wardrobe so that small boys can be admiring you? Besides, am I not the one you are dressing for? Your clothes look presentable to me, they are even too beautiful," Akin would say. Folake only received money from Akin when her parents were very sick or when they had called several times to beg for support. One day, while Folake was at home crying and thinking about her life, she began to pray, asking God to take away her husband's wealth and make him experience the same misery she was enduring. "Take away his money, make him poor, and let him suffer as I am suffering," Folake prayed as she cried. Soon, she fell asleep and dreamt of an old woman who came to her and asked, "My daughter, what is the problem?" Folake told her everything about how Akin had mistreated her, made her stop working, and failed to take care of her. The old woman responded, "My daughter, your husband does not realize that his prosperity is linked to you. If you had not come into his life, he would never have become wealthy. Your presence is what brings him success. So, what do you want me to do? Should I take away his wealth?" Folake replied angrily, "Yes, Mama, I want it taken away. He won't let me work, yet he won't take care of me. He is selfish and only thinks of himself. The money is of no use to me, so let it be of no use to him. I am already suffering, so let him join me in this suffering." The old woman said, "Go, my daughter. It is done." Immediately, Folake woke up from her dream. Throughout the day, she kept thinking about the dream and wasn't sorry for asking the old woman to make her husband poor. After all, she was already living in misery. In the following 3 weeks, things began to change rapidly. One day, Akin received a call that his 3 shops were on fire. By the time he reached the market, all 3 shops had been reduced to ashes, and nothing could be salvaged. None of the neighboring shops were affected. Akin broke down, crying and wailing. When he got home, he was still crying when he received another call from his mechanic. The cars Akin had given him to repair were involved in an accident. The mechanic said that while returning the cars, he and his apprentice had been in an accident, and the cars were crushed beyond repair. Akin could not believe it. "My village people have finally finished me," he lamented. "Who have I offended?" Akin wept bitterly. Folake tried to console him but remembered her dream. Yes, she had asked the old woman to make her husband poor, but she had not expected it to happen so quickly or so drastically. She could not bear to see Akin suffer, despite how he had hurt her. No one deserved to endure such hardship. Akin was always crying, had lost significant weight, and had become fearful of receiving calls, as they always brought bad news. Within 3 weeks after Folake's dream, Akin had become penniless, with less than 2,000 naira to his name. Akin began visiting various prayer houses, but they all told him he had offended someone badly. They said things would not improve until he asked for forgiveness. Akin was frustrated as he could not identify who he had wronged, and the prophets and pastors could not tell him either. Things became very difficult for them. They could barely afford food. Akin had to borrow money from a friend to restart his business, but each time he received money, something would happen, and it would disappear without any tangible benefit. Akin and Folake continued to suffer. Eventually, Akin started selling his designer shoes, clothes, and other expensive items to buy food. One day, Folake spoke to her husband, "My husband, don't you think it's time for me to return to making hair? At least with the little I earn, I can help support our home, and you won't have to borrow money or sell items for us to eat. I don't even need capital to start, I can begin from home." Akin was very pleased with Folake's offer to work. He had wanted to suggest this before but didn't know how to approach it. Ashamed of his past actions towards her, Akin eagerly agreed, "Thank you, Folake. I fully support your decision. When can you start working again?" he asked anxiously. The following day, Folake began spreading the word that she was back to making hair. It seemed that everyone had missed her, she was swamped with customers. People were booking appointments in advance and flocking to her home. They paid any amount she asked and even gave her extra money as gifts. It was as if she had some magical power. She would charge 6,000 naira for a hairstyle and receive over 40,000 naira, telling her to keep the change. Within just 1 week, Folake earned over 3 million naira. The clients were so generous that they often gave her 10 times the amount she charged. Folake was astonished and couldn't understand what was happening. Akin watched from the window, equally shocked. He had never seen such favor before. How could more than 50 women show up at their house daily for hair appointments when there were salons everywhere? By the 3rd week, Folake had made over 8 million naira from her home-based salon. Akin began to fear that Folake might mistreat him because of how he had treated her before. But he was surprised when Folake gave him 5 million naira to restart his business. She also bought clothes and shoes for both of them. Akin felt deeply embarrassed and ashamed as he remembered how he had treated her in the past. Despite the 5 million naira Folake gave him, Akin decided not to restart his business until he discovered who he had wronged, so the money wouldn't go to waste like the previous loans from his friends. One day, while praying and asking God to reveal who he had offended, Akin suddenly realized that it was Folake he had wronged. He was shocked to discover that it was his own wife who had been responsible for his misfortune. He hadn't realized that his mistreatment of Folake could cause such consequences. That day, Akin approached Folake and said, "My love, Folake, I thought the person I had wronged was outside. I didn't know it was you. I am so sorry. I was afraid you would earn more money than me and become disrespectful. I thought that if I allowed you to keep working, I wouldn't be able to control you. When I spoke to my friend Agba about your success, he advised me to stop you from working and to control you by giving you only a little money. I am so sorry for listening to him." Folake, crying, responded, "You hurt me badly, Akin. I had a dream where I asked an old woman to make you poor, but I didn't expect it to happen so quickly and drastically. I am willing to forgive you from my heart. We are partners, husband and wife, and we should support each other, not compete. What I have is yours, and what you have is mine. Why should making more money be a problem?" Akin and Folake hugged each other, crying together. Folake prayed for her husband and asked God to restore him. That night, Folake dreamed that an old woman told her that Akin had finally learned his lesson and that the curse was lifted. For her sake, his prosperity was restored. Excited, Folake shared her dream with Akin, and they were both overjoyed. Akin could now use the 7 million naira Folake had given him to restart his business without fear. In the following months, Akin successfully restarted his business and even opened 3 more shops. Folake opened a large salon. Both Akin and Folake thrived. Akin and Folake lived happily, prospering, buying cars, building houses, and eventually had 3 beautiful children, 2 girls and a boy. Please do subscribe to this channel for more awesome story. Thanks for watching.